Of all the changes we chase in life, the transformations we long for, the breakthroughs we hope will finally come, few are as profound, as quietly revolutionary, as the change that happens when you stop being endlessly available. At first, it's subtle, almost invisible. You pull back slightly. You don't answer right away. You stop offering explanations for your every move. And the world, used to your constant presence, your ready yes, begins to feel unsettled. People notice. Some get confused. Others get angry. And a few, perhaps the ones who truly cared, simply adjust and respect the shift without complaint. But underneath it all, a deeper current moves. You start reclaiming your life from the hands of everyone who thought it was theirs to command. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and becoming who you truly are requires silence, space, unavailability. It demands that you break the invisible contracts you never agreed to, the ones that said you owe everyone a response, a presence, a part of yourself. When you step away from that cycle, something powerful happens. You stop living as a reaction to others, and you start living from a place of inner truth. You realize that your value isn't in how quickly you answer a text, or how often you say yes. It's in the depth of who you are, a depth that few can see when you're always on the surface, always available. It's a quiet revolution, but make no mistake, it changes everything. When you stop being always available, everything changes. There's an invisible cost to being always available, a cost most people don't even realize they're paying until it's far too late. Every unanswered call you rush to return, every text you reply to instantly, every favor you say yes to without a second thought. Little by little, you hand pieces of yourself away. Not out of malice, not even out of weakness, but because you were taught, maybe even conditioned, to believe that your value lives in your accessibility, that your goodness is measured by how quickly you drop your own needs to meet the needs of others. But something extraordinary happens the moment you stop. The moment you step back, even slightly, from that unspoken obligation. The moment you allow a call to go unanswered, a text to sit there, a request to be met with thoughtful hesitation instead of automatic compliance. The shift is almost electric. It's not just that people notice, it's that they feel it. Your absence disrupts the pattern they've come to depend on. The easy control they had through your predictability dissolves, and for the first time, they're forced to confront the reality that you are not an extension of their desires. You are your own. At first, the world resists. Some people may push harder, testing your boundaries, trying to pull you back into the role they're comfortable with. You might even feel guilty, as if reclaiming your life is somehow an act of aggression. But over time, a different current emerges, a deeper, more powerful current. The people who truly respect you will adapt. The ones who only valued you for what you gave them will drift away. And you, for perhaps the first time in your life, will begin to feel the weight of your own presence, a presence no longer diluted by constant reaction. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Yet how can you become anything at all if you are always available for everyone else's plans, needs, and moods? Growth demands space. Selfhood demands stillness. Wisdom demands moments of quiet where you are not answering to the world, but listening deeply, patiently to yourself. There is a sacred kind of strength that only grows in the soil of your own solitude. Not loneliness, but intentional, chosen solitude. It's in that silence that you remember you are not obligated to be everyone's solution, everyone's comfort, everyone's distraction from themselves. You are here to live your own story, not to fill the gaps in everyone else's. So the next time you feel that familiar tug to answer right away, to say yes automatically, to be there immediately, pause, breathe. Remember, your availability is not your virtue, it is your resource, your energy, your life force, and it is far too precious to be given away without thought. The day you stop being always available is the day everything starts to change, not because you are being cruel or distant, but because you are finally being true, true to yourself, true to the life you were meant to live, and in that truth, you will find a power the world cannot give you and cannot take away. Excessive availability is not a virtue. It's a prison. We are often praised for being available, for being the person others can always count on, no matter the hour, no matter the cost to ourselves. Somewhere along the way, availability was mistaken for kindness and self-sacrifice for virtue. But if we look closely, really closely, we start to see something darker beneath this surface. Excessive availability isn't generosity. It's often a form of self-abandonment, a silent surrender of your own life force to the endless demands of others. When you are always there, always ready to help, always eager to please, you teach the world how to treat you. Without realizing it, you make yourself easy to overlook, easy to take for granted. Your presence becomes expected, not appreciated. Your kindness becomes assumed, not valued. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, your sense of worth starts to be defined by how much of yourself you give away, until there's almost nothing left for you. Carl Jung once wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." And one of the easiest ways people avoid their own discomfort, their own emptiness, is by filling their lives with others, with you, if you let them. Your constant availability becomes a shield they use against their own loneliness, their own fears, their own unresolved pain. They don't have to sit with themselves if they can always reach for you. But where does that leave you? Caught in a cycle where your life becomes a tool for others to escape their own. There's a deeper tragedy here. When you live to be available, you start to lose the sharp edges of who you are. You forget what you want, what you love, what calls you forward in life. You become a reflection of others' needs instead of an expression of your own soul. Your dreams, your passions, your very essence slowly blur into the background noise of a life lived for everyone but yourself. The truth is, you were not born to be a lifeline for others at the expense of your own breath. You were not meant to stretch yourself so thin that you become invisible, even to yourself. Real kindness, the kind that heals rather than harms, begins with boundaries. With the courage to say, "I am not available right now, I am tending to my own soul." And in doing so, you give others the space, the necessity to tend to their own. So ask yourself, with as much honesty as you can muster, where in your life has kindness turned into a prison? Where has being available become a way of disappearing from yourself? And most importantly, are you willing to endure the discomfort of disappointing others in order to finally stop betraying yourself? Because when you do, when you reclaim the time and energy you once gave away so freely, you will begin to taste a kind of freedom few ever experience. The freedom of a life owned completely, unapologetically, by you. The mask of the persona keeps you over-available. There's a strange, quiet tragedy that unfolds when you live too long behind a mask, a persona carefully shaped to be everything the world seems to want from you. Maybe it started as a survival tool, a way to fit in, a way to be liked, to avoid rejection, to feel needed. But over time, what once felt like a choice hardens into a reflex. And before you even realize it, you are no longer living from the truth of who you are. You are living from the expectation of who you should be. A smile when you're tired. A yes when your whole being aches for a no. A constant presence when all you crave is a breath, a moment, a space to be unseen. Carl Jung described the persona as that which in reality one is not, but which oneself as well as others think one is. It's a chilling idea that not only does the world buy into the mask you wear, but you begin to believe it too. You start to think that being available, being agreeable, being endlessly accommodating is who you are. But it's not. It's who you thought you needed to be to survive. It's who you learned to become in a world that often rewards appearances more than authenticity. This mask demands a heavy toll. It asks you to be always reachable, always responsive, always agreeable, even when your soul quietly protests. It convinces you that love must be earned by your usefulness. That belonging must be paid for with the currency of self-sacrifice. And so you stay over-available, not because your heart is open, but because your mask is terrified of what might happen if you dare to pull away. But behind the mask, something else stirs. A quieter truth. A longing not just to be liked, but to be known. Not just to be needed, but to be seen, deeply, honestly, even imperfectly. And that longing cannot be met by being everything for everyone. It can only be met by stripping away the mask, even if it risks losing the applause, even if it risks disappointing those who never knew the real you to begin with. The fear is real. The fear that if you stop being so available, so accommodating, so perfectly reliable, you will be abandoned, that you will be deemed unworthy. But here's the deeper truth. The ones who love only your mask never loved you. And if the price of acceptance is your authenticity, the cost is far too high. So consider this. Who are you when no one is looking? Who are you when you are no longer performing? And what would it feel like? What kind of life might you create if you started offering the world not your persona, but your presence? A presence rooted in truth, not in fear. A presence willing to be sometimes unavailable, sometimes imperfect, sometimes gloriously, unapologetically real. Because it's only when you shed the mask that you discover something extraordinary. The ones who stay, the ones who truly see you, never needed the mask in the first place. Emotional availability becomes a tool for manipulation. There's a hidden vulnerability in being emotionally available without boundaries. What begins as a beautiful openness, a willingness to listen, to care, to feel deeply with others, can quietly become a doorway through which manipulation enters your life. The more you respond, the more you give, the more you show up without question, the easier it becomes for others to use your emotions as levers to get what they want. And often, they don't even realize they're doing it. They simply learn, over time, that your heart is a tool they can wield whenever it suits them. When you don't set limits on your emotional availability, you unintentionally send a signal. My energy, my time, my empathy are always up for grabs. And once people sense that, even unconsciously, they begin to pull at you, to demand your attention, your reassurance, your validation, whenever it serves their needs. It's rarely obvious. It doesn't always come with loud demands or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes it's the quiet expectation that you will always answer, always care, always fix what they are unwilling to face themselves. Carl Jung offers a chilling insight here. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. If you are not consciously choosing when and how to offer your emotional presence, others will choose for you. They will shape your life around their wounds, their emptiness, their fears, and call it friendship or love or duty. But deep down, you will feel the erosion. You will feel yourself being stretched thinner and thinner until your own emotional reserves run dry. The danger of this dynamic is that it masquerades as connection. It feels good, even necessary, to be needed. There's a temporary glow, a sense of purpose in being the one others turn to. But if you listen carefully, you'll notice something missing. Reciprocity. True connection nurtures both sides. True love strengthens both souls. Manipulation, even when unintentional, drains only one. And so the question must be asked, gently but relentlessly, are you being loved, or are you being used? Are you being valued, or are you being consumed? The hardest part of waking up to this truth is realizing how much of it you allowed, even encouraged, by confusing availability with love. But awareness is not condemnation. It's liberation. Once you see the pattern, you can begin to change it. You can begin to say no without apology. You can begin to choose when and how you offer your emotional depth, not from guilt or fear, but from genuine desire. You can begin to offer your heart not as a service, but as a sacred gift, something precious, rare, and deserving of careful stewardship. Because your emotions, your empathy, your deep wells of feeling, they are not tools for others to use. They are the very essence of who you are, and they deserve to be protected, respected, and given only where they are honored in return. People don't value what they don't have to earn. There's a strange law of human nature, as old as time itself. We rarely cherish what comes too easily. We may enjoy it, we may indulge in it, but we don't respect it, not truly. And when it comes to human relationships, this law is merciless. If your time, your attention, your energy are always available without question, without effort, without any cost, they become invisible, expected, taken for granted like air, like water, like all the things we never stop to thank until they are gone. It's not because people are inherently cruel or ungrateful. It's simply that the mind is wired to value what feels rare, what feels earned, what demands awareness and effort. When you are always available, when you never make your presence something intentional, something others must rise to meet, you unknowingly teach them to see you as a given, not as a gift. Carl Jung captured this truth when he said, "The more you deliberately seek happiness, the more you emphasize and magnify how much you don't have it. In the same way, the more your availability is automatic, the less it is appreciated." Because the human heart needs effort to awaken real appreciation. It needs longing to ignite real value. It needs the experience of absence to truly savor presence. If people never have to earn your time, they will treat it as endless. If they never have to wonder whether you will show up, they will stop asking themselves why they deserve your presence at all. And over time, you will start to feel the slow ache of invisibility, a feeling far worse than rejection, because it's not that they push you away, it's that they stop seeing you at all. The solution is not to become cold or withholding. It's not to build walls around yourself out of bitterness or fear. It's to become conscious, fiercely conscious, of the value of your own presence. To understand that your time, your attention, your emotional energy are finite, sacred resources. They are not owed to everyone simply because they ask. They must be earned by respect, by reciprocity, by genuine connection. And when you start treating your own presence with that level of reverence, others will either rise to meet it or they will fall away. Both outcomes are a blessing, because in either case, you are no longer wasting the most precious currency of your life on those who cannot or will not honor it. So ask yourself, who treats your presence as a privilege and who treats it as a convenience? Where are you pouring your energy into hands that hold it carelessly, without thought, without gratitude? You owe it to yourself, not from pride, but from love, to reserve your deepest presence for those who recognize its worth, because when you do, you not only protect your heart, you elevate your entire existence. Psychic energy, where does it go and who controls it? Every day, without even noticing it, you are spending psychic energy. Every thought you entertain, every emotion you linger on, every conversation you engage in, all of it costs you something, and though the cost is invisible, the effects are not. Fatigue, anxiety, a lingering sense of being scattered, drained, worn thin by 1,000 invisible demands. You feel it in the heaviness behind your eyes, in the ache in your chest, in the restless racing of your mind at night when the world finally goes quiet. Yet few of us ever stop to ask the most important question: where is my energy going, and who decides? Carl Jung once observed, "Energy is never lost in the psychic system, it is merely transformed," which means that even when you think you're just wasting time, when you get pulled into unnecessary drama, when you argue with people who aren't ready to understand, when you explain yourself over and over to those determined not to listen, you are not just wasting time. You are transforming your precious inner energy into exhaustion, into confusion, into a life that feels heavy and directionless. And the painful truth is, if you do not consciously decide where your energy flows, someone else will. The world is full of people, systems, and distractions that are more than willing to harvest your attention, your focus, your emotional labor. Not because they are evil, but because energy is power. Whoever controls your energy controls your life. It begins subtly, a small argument that drains you for hours, a comment that lives rent-free in your mind for days, an expectation you never agreed to but now feel trapped by. And before you know it, the current of your life is no longer being steered by your own hand. It's being pulled by every passing tide of external demands. But imagine, for a moment, reclaiming that current. Imagine treating your psychic energy as the sacred, limited resource it truly is. Imagine choosing with great care where your attention goes, what you respond to, who you allow to occupy your emotional landscape. Imagine building an inner life so rooted, so intentional, that no passing storm can uproot it without your permission. It is not selfish to protect your energy. It is not cruel to refuse to be available to every demand, every crisis, every call for your emotional attention. It is, in fact, the only way to live authentically, to create a life that is truly yours and not just a series of reactions to everything and everyone around you. So ask yourself with unflinching honesty, where has your psychic energy been leaking away without your consent? Who or what have you been empowering simply by giving your attention, your reactions, your explanations? The moment you begin to reclaim your energy is the moment you begin to reclaim your life. Because in the end, your energy is not just what fuels you, it is who you are becoming. Reactivity is not power. Conscious withdrawal is. In a world that celebrates quick responses, instant opinions, and immediate reactions, silence can seem like weakness. To pause instead of reply, to step back instead of charge forward. to remain still while others demand a show of force. But real strength, the kind that endures, does not live in reactivity. It lives in restraint. In the quiet, deliberate choice not to be pulled into every battle, every drama, every emotional storm that rages around you. Reactivity feels powerful in the moment. It feels like action, like control. You snap back at the insult. You rush to defend yourself against the misunderstanding. You chase after the slight to correct it, explain it, fix it. But underneath that flurry of movement, something essential is lost: your center. Because when you react impulsively, you are not choosing. You are being pulled. You are no longer the author of your life, but the echo of someone else's provocation. Carl Jung reminds us, even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness. Darkness, conflict, misunderstanding, disappointment is inevitable. What defines your life is not whether darkness comes, but how you meet it. Will you be swept away by every wave that hits you, or will you learn to stand firm, rooted, silent, until you choose the right moment, the right response? If any response is even needed at all. Conscious withdrawal is not weakness. It is mastery. It is the quiet, powerful understanding that not every accusation deserves an answer. Not every provocation deserves your energy. Not every emotional tug deserves your presence. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is no move at all, letting the noise pass like a storm around a mountain, untouched, unmoved, unbroken. This is not about cold detachment. It's about fierce clarity. It's about knowing yourself so deeply that you no longer need to prove, defend, or explain your worth. It's about conserving your energy for the battles that matter, and refusing to be baited into every skirmish that would drain your soul for nothing. Imagine the difference it would make in your life if you paused, just paused, every time you felt the rush to react, if you breathed instead of lunged, if you chose silence instead of defense, if you allowed yourself the dignity of response rather than the compulsion of reaction. Reactivity is noise. Conscious withdrawal is signal. It tells the world and yourself that you are not here to be controlled by every passing storm. You are here to move from a place of strength, intention, and unwavering presence. And sometimes the strongest, most radical thing you can do is nothing at all. You are being projected upon and manipulated silently. There's a haunting truth that most people spend their lives trying to avoid. We rarely see each other as we are. Instead, we see each other through the thick fog of our own fears, wounds, and desires. We project. We cast others into roles that make sense of our own inner chaos. The caretaker, the villain, the savior, the scapegoat. And once those roles are assigned, they become prisons, silent, invisible, but suffocating all the same. When you are endlessly available, emotionally open without clear boundaries, you become an especially easy target for these projections. People don't relate to you. They relate to the version of you that serves their needs, explains their wounds, validates their insecurities. They don't ask who you are. They decide who you must be. And if you're not careful, if you don't stay deeply awake, you begin to live inside the cage they have built for you. Carl Jung warns us, knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. Without that self-knowledge, you will be pulled into the games others play with themselves. Games they are often not even aware they are playing. You will be blamed for emotions you didn't cause, held responsible for expectations you never agreed to, cast as the villain in stories that were never truly yours to begin with. This silent manipulation is dangerous because it is so subtle. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It creeps into your relationships, your self-perception, your choices. It makes you second-guess yourself. It pressures you to over-explain, to overgive, to apologize for things that are not yours to carry. It convinces you that setting boundaries is cruel, that stepping back is betrayal, that saying no makes you the bad one. But once you recognize the pattern, everything changes. You realize that projection is not about you, it's about them, their fears, their unmet needs, their unresolved wounds. You are simply the mirror that happens to reflect it. And you have the right, the responsibility, to step out of that mirror, to refuse the roles they hand you, to stop dancing to music you never chose. The real work, the deep work, is not in fighting every projection. It's in seeing them for what they are and choosing not to play along. It's in building such a strong, clear sense of self that no external story, no imagined version of you can dictate your reality. So the next time you feel the subtle pull, the guilt, the pressure, the manipulation, ask yourself, whose story am I living right now? Whose expectations am I trying to meet? And more importantly, what would happen if I simply refused the role altogether? Because the moment you stop living inside other people's projections is the moment you begin to live freely, fiercely, as yourself. Unavailability breaks the projection game. The moment you withdraw your constant presence, the moment you step out of the role others have silently assigned to you, something powerful and unsettling happens. The entire illusion collapses. Without your predictable reactions, without your constant emotional labor, without your ready availability to validate their expectations, people are forced to confront a reality they would rather avoid, the empty space within themselves that they try to fill with your energy. Projection thrives on your participation. It needs your agreement, even if that agreement is silent and unconscious. It needs you to keep showing up as the version of yourself that fits their story, the caretaker, the forgiver, the reliable one who never says no. As long as you keep playing the part, the illusion lives. But when you become unavailable, when you no longer react the way they expect, when you no longer explain, justify, or overextend yourself, the narrative begins to fracture. At first, the response might be confusion, then anger, maybe even accusations. You've changed. You're being selfish. You're not who I thought you were. And in a way, they're right. You have changed. Or rather, you have stopped being the illusion they projected onto you. And for people who are deeply attached to their stories, this can feel like a betrayal. But it's not. It's an invitation, painful, yes, but necessary, for them to finally see reality, both yours and their own. Carl Jung understood this profound mechanism when he said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Your withdrawal, your refusal to continue the projection game, becomes a mirror. It reflects back to them their own unmet needs, their own insecurities, their own abandoned responsibilities. And not everyone will be ready or willing to look. Some will lash out, some will leave. Some will try to pull you back into the old dynamic. But a few, the brave ones, will use that irritation as a doorway to growth. The beauty of stepping out of projections is that it frees both you and them. You free yourself from living a life scripted by other people's wounds, and you offer them, even if they never accept it, the chance to confront their true selves without the crutch of your compliance. But most importantly, you reclaim the sacred space of your own being. no longer defined by what others need you to be, no longer trapped in stories you didn't write, no longer living a half-life, trying to be everything to everyone. There is a profound peace that comes when you let go of the need to be understood by those who only saw the mask, not the person. A deep, quiet freedom in no longer having to perform, explain, or defend your existence. So ask yourself today, what projections am I still feeding by my availability? What illusions am I still helping to sustain by my constant presence? And what would it feel like to simply stop? Because sometimes the greatest gift you can offer yourself and others is the space, the silence, and the courage to let false stories die. The power of silence as a tool for individuation. In a world that demands constant noise, opinions shouted across screens, endless conversations filling every quiet space, silence becomes radical. It becomes an act of rebellion, of self-ownership, of profound creation. True silence is not merely the absence of words. It is the presence of something far deeper, a self no longer defined by others' expectations, no longer tethered to the need for validation, no longer shaped by the fear of being misunderstood. When you choose silence, especially in the spaces where you once rushed to explain, justify, or correct, you create a sacred vacuum. And in that vacuum, something extraordinary happens. The true self begins to speak, not loudly, not in ways that beg for attention, but with a steady, undeniable presence that no one else can define or distort. Carl Jung wrote, "In all chaos there is a cosmos, in all disorder a secret order." Silence is where that secret order reveals itself. When you stop reacting to the endless noise of the world, the demands, the projections, the roles, you begin to hear the deeper rhythms of your own soul. You begin to sense who you are beneath the conditioning, the masks, the reflexes that once ruled your life. Individuation, the process Jung spoke of so often, is not a loud march towards selfhood. It is a quiet uncovering, a shedding of everything that is not you, and silence is its most essential tool. It strips away the distractions. It forces you to sit with yourself, to face your own chaos, your own questions, your own contradictions, without reaching for someone else's voice to drown them out. But silence is not easy. In its depths, you will meet the parts of yourself you have long avoided, the parts that are scared, the parts that still seek approval, the parts that ache for connection even when it costs authenticity. It takes immense courage to remain in that silence, to listen without judgment, to hold yourself without needing to perform or explain. And yet on the other side of that courage is a freedom beyond anything the noisy world can offer. A freedom to exist, to move, to speak or not speak, from a place of profound inner alignment. A freedom to belong to yourself before you belong to anyone else. Imagine carrying that silence with you into every room you enter, not the silence of withdrawal or coldness, but the silence of knowing, of not needing to prove anything, of not needing to fill every space with words to earn your right to exist. Imagine the power of responding, if you choose to respond at all, not from reactivity, but from a place of grounded, deliberate presence. That is the true power of silence. It is not emptiness, it is not absence, it is presence, amplified. It is where the false self crumbles and the real self emerges, strong, whole, and finally free. Conscious unavailability is self-respect in action. There is a profound difference between reacting out of anger and withdrawing out of self-respect. To be consciously unavailable, to choose when and how you offer your presence, is not cruelty. It is clarity. It is the quiet, unwavering statement that your time, your energy, your peace are not resources to be taken for granted. They are sacred, and sacred things are not handed out casually to anyone who asks. Too often we are taught that goodness means availability, that love means constant sacrifice, that compassion means never saying no, and so we overextend. We exhaust ourselves. We stay in conversations that drain us, in relationships that belittle us, in obligations that crush our spirit, all because we are afraid of what it might mean to finally put ourselves first. But the truth is, real love, real self-respect, begins with conscious unavailability. It begins with knowing that your worth does not increase the more you diminish yourself for others. It begins with understanding that protecting your energy is not selfish. It is an act of deep reverence for the life you've been given. Carl Jung's insight rings deeply here. What you resist persists. What you accept transforms. If you continue to resist your own need for space, for boundaries, for self-preservation, the exhaustion will only grow. The resentment will only build. The quiet, aching loss of yourself will only deepen. But if you accept, fully and without apology, that you have the right to be unavailable, to step back, to protect your soul, something begins to transform. You stop living in reaction to guilt and expectation. You start living in alignment with your own inner truth. Choosing conscious unavailability does not mean closing your heart. It means guarding its doors wisely. It means understanding that not every knock deserves an answer. Not every invitation deserves a yes. It means trusting that the right people, the ones who truly see you, respect you, value you, will never require you to sacrifice yourself to earn their love. And when you move through the world with that kind of grounded self-respect, everything shifts. You attract relationships built on mutual recognition, not exploitation. You create spaces where your authenticity can breathe and grow. You build a life not based on the fear of disappointing others, but on the joy of being deeply true to yourself. So the next time you feel the pull to be everywhere, to answer everything, to meet every expectation, pause. Remember, your availability is a gift, not an obligation. Your presence is powerful precisely because it is finite, because it is chosen, because it is offered freely, not extracted through guilt or fear. And the more you honor that truth, the more your life becomes a reflection of real love, starting always with the love you give yourself. The solitude of the strong is the beginning of inner freedom. There's a kind of solitude that doesn't come from loneliness or exile, but from strength, from a deliberate, powerful choice to stand alone when necessary. It's the solitude of those who have stopped chasing after validation, who no longer sell pieces of themselves in exchange for fleeting approval. It's the solitude of those who have realized that real connection can never be built on the fear of being alone, that only when you are willing to be alone can you ever be truly free. At first, this solitude can feel unsettling. After all, much of life teaches us that worthiness is tied to constant connection, that to be loved, to be seen, we must always be in orbit around others, always available, always needed. To step away from that pattern feels like stepping into a void, quiet, vast, unfamiliar. But if you can stay with it, if you can resist the urge to rush back into noise just to escape the silence, something extraordinary happens. The void becomes a sanctuary, a place where your own voice, long drowned out by the clamor of other people's needs and expectations, can finally be heard. Carl Jung said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." Real loneliness is not the absence of others. It's the absence of being understood, the soul's hunger for authentic connection, and no amount of forced availability, no amount of desperate clinging to relationships can fill that hunger. It can only be met by first understanding yourself, by first standing firmly in who you are, even when no one else is watching, even when no one else applauds. The solitude of the strong is not about shutting the world out. It's about no longer needing the world's constant validation to feel whole. It's about choosing relationships based on truth, not fear. It's about giving from abundance, not from desperation. And it's about knowing that your worth does not rise and fall based on how many people need you at any given moment. Imagine the life that becomes possible when you are no longer afraid of being alone. Imagine the power of choosing your connections, your conversations, your commitments, not out of loneliness, but out of genuine alignment. Imagine the deep, steady peace that comes from knowing you could walk away from anything that violates your soul, not because you don't care, but because you care too much about the life you're building within yourself. This kind of solitude is not a prison, it's a doorway into the vast, unshakable freedom of a life lived on your own terms. A life where you no longer bargain your presence for scraps of attention. A life where you're no longer defined by who stays or who leaves. A life where you, finally, are enough. Not in theory, but in the deep, beating truth of your own heart. So if you find yourself standing alone today, know this: you are not lost. You are not abandoned. You are becoming free. When you stop being endlessly available, you stop living at the mercy of the world's noise. You step away from the roles others assign to you, the expectations that chained you to a life too small for your spirit. You step into silence, not the silence of absence, but the silence of presence. A silence where your own voice, long overshadowed by demands and distractions, rises with quiet certainty. You realize that every moment of attention you once gave away without thought was never truly free. It cost you pieces of yourself, pieces you are now called to gather back, and with every no you dare to say, with every boundary you draw, not in anger, but in clarity, you reclaim those lost parts. You begin, slowly but surely, to become whole again. Carl Jung's wisdom echoes through every step of this journey. Individuation is not a loud rebellion. It's a subtle, sacred unfolding. It's in the choice to be misunderstood rather than betray yourself. It's in the courage to be alone rather than be consumed. It's in the strength to listen deeply to your own soul, even when the world demands your constant noise. Today, you stand at a threshold. You can continue living as a reaction to every tug, every expectation, every projection placed upon you. Or you can step back, gently, firmly, intentionally, and choose a different path. A path where your energy is guarded like the treasure it is. A path where your silence speaks louder than your justifications. A path where your worth is no longer up for negotiation. And as you walk that path, you will find that the right people, the ones who see you, not just the mask you wore, will not be repelled by your boundaries. They will be drawn to your authenticity, to the quiet power that can only come from a soul that belongs first to itself. So choose your availability like you would choose where to plant a rare and precious seed. Give it only to the soil that will honor it. Withdraw from the noise that seeks to drain it. And know that in doing so, you're not abandoning the world. You are finally, fully arriving in it as your truest self. If today's journey resonated with you, and you're ready to keep building that life of clarity, strength, and inner freedom, I invite you to join this community. Subscribe, share this episode with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment with your reflections. Your voice, your truth, your journey, they matter here. And this is only the beginning.